for Q&A, which is, I think, a good amount of time, so get your questions ready. Give it up for Asaf Saban. This is just such an extraordinary film, and I'm not just saying that because you're here. I've been saying it to other people as well. But I think one of the things that you capture so well is that, you know, these kids are on a trip trying to comprehend the magnitude of the Holocaust, right? And the history that comes with that. But they're grappling with their own interpersonal relationships, and those, I think you do a really good job of communicating just how important those relationships are at the time. Like, those are the most important things to those kids. So what was that process like? What were you like pulling from? Like, because it feels very real as somebody who's also gone on high school trips like this. But yeah, where is that coming from?
I guess it comes from my own life experiences. Someone who was born, grew up, and still live in a country, well, let's say there's quite a thin line between where you as an individual ends and something bigger begins. This borderline is almost invisible. And I guess there's some good sides for that, but there's also, it's a complicated relationship, as I say. And I think those kids, and not necessarily those specific kids, but I can speak on behalf of myself, before trying to comprehend the Holocaust, I was trying to comprehend who I am. And I think that this age is quite fragile. And I was much more interested in the film first, that was a challenge for me as a writer, to forget everything I know as a grown-up, everything I've read and watched and known about the Holocaust, and trying to go back to how it felt being there. Like, it comes to very basic things. Before you add on that I would call it social phenomena, history and politics and the social studies and everything you want to add, it's a very extreme and strange experience of reality. For Israelis, we live in a kind of an island-like mentality. It's not like we go on road trips abroad that easily. So it has a lot of excitement being on your own. I mean, for most of them, for the first time abroad without their parents. And obviously the context and the setup brings very, very extreme dissonance to that experience of reality. And I could go on talking about why the educational system was take apart, was one to send them there, but I was much more interested in staying loyal to the point of view of them, and to try and capture notions or the emotional ambiguity of being a teenager. That was the most important thing to me. Because in our daily life, history and the national story, and the Holocaust for that matter, overcast our own personal existence. So I wanted to try, it's quite a big challenge because I also picked quite ordinary kids dealing with ordinary problems and trying to put the focus on them, not on the, I would say, most dramatic story in the history of humankind. So that was a challenge. But it was done not for the sake of a challenge, it was done for ethical reasons and for this type of, I would say, fight or dissonance that I experience every day between where I'm as an individual. This kind of very, I would say, demanding relationship between me and my country.
I think it's really interesting because I was thinking about your short film Paradise from 2020. For those of you who might remember that film, it was in our 2020 Boston Jewish Film Festival in the Fresh Flicks program. But that film also deals with that dissonance as well, where there's a group of people at that beach resort town while there's a military campaign going on in the distance. And I just think it's interesting how Delegation kind of dives deeper into that dissonance. So is that something it seems like that's something you think about often?
I live it, I don't even think about it. I mean, I have endless experiences from myself as just Asaf. Like a few weeks after, I give you just an example, a few weeks after October 7, I found myself in the Polish premiere of Delegation, which was in Berlin. I don't know how many of you know the Jewish Museum in Warsaw. It's a very, very, the location itself holds a lot of weight. And that was, I think, 2 or 3 weeks after October 7, and I had to supposedly represent someone or talk on behalf of something, and I could hardly represent myself back then. So this was just an example of what it means being an Israeli. I mean, I guess some of you ask yourself now what it means being an American.
Yeah.
I mean, I wish to lose this competition, believe me. It's not something that someone would want to live to such an extent, but my life as an individual are so much connected to things that, you know, to the historical story, and it's a love-hate relationship. But again, going back to Delegation, I think that there are certain characteristics of being a teenager which perfectly fit in. I think teenagers want to live bigger than life experience. I think they want to touch the real thing. I think they want to feel belong, because sometimes you're just lonely and you want to be part of something bigger. And again, I wanted to observe this moment in time. It's not a coincidence that those trips happened a year before those kids are going to the army. It's as extreme and strange experience those trips are. It's the most common coming of age experience of Israelis. And yeah, I wanted to observe that before even judging it, or before implementing any kind of ideology or agenda, because by doing so, I think I would not stay loyal to what it means being a teenager. Yeah, and by the way, it's not a lecture. More than welcome to ask questions.
We'll turn it over to folks.
I would just say one more thing, that I realized that growing up, or this process of coming of age, in a way, it's also kind of splitting apart or saying goodbye, because when you're a teenager, not knowing who you are very much dependent on what others will think about you, or this connection. And I think that this is kind of a bittersweet tone that I wanted to add in. And let's say I'm going through this process with my own nation and birthplace, and I don't see it finishes soon. So, yeah.
Great, thank you so much. We do have time for audience questions, so we'll go to Laura.
So, I'm curious about the role of the grandfather, who was beautifully, first of all, thank you for a wonderful film. Wonderful. And I found the role of the grandfather both beautifully written and marvelously acted. And for me, he played multiple roles in terms of the relationship between the kids, between him and his grandson, and in the historical perspective. And I assume, although I might not be right, that not every one of these trips includes a survivor. So why did you choose to include a survivor on this trip? What was the idea, and did it play out in the way you expected?
So the question was just to talk about the role of the grandfather in the film and the idea of putting a survivor in, including a survivor in the trip with the teenagers.
First, that's just an anecdote. I don't know how many of you recognize Ezra Dagan became famous playing in Schindler's List. He was Rabbi Nathan in Schindler's List. So, yeah, in very early stages of the writing, someone told me that if you calculate how old Yosef is, because the first testimony says I was about your age when I first, when the Germans invaded Poland, it means that like he's supposed to be like 90-something, or people in this way, this film takes place in the 90s. And when I realized that, I decided to leave it, because I grew up in the 90s, and one of the things I remember the most from my trip was Judith, the Holocaust survivor that joined our group. She was nothing like I expected a Holocaust survivor to behave, which was not by coincidence. This is one of the most vivid memories I have from this trip. All the others actually had nothing to do with Auschwitz, Birkenau, Treblinka. All my memories that stayed with me are from non-important moments that happened in between. Okay, and I'm going back to Yosef. So when I realized that, and nowadays, by the way, for biological reasons, let's say, there's no living witnesses joining those groups. 2 weeks ago, I met like 200 high schoolers that are about to, that are actually now in Poland, and they were not even aware of this option. And the reason why I decided to keep it and to do kind of a period film only with iPhones is that I think the storytelling of Yosef is something that in a way, I don't want to use the word threatened by, but it's not how we perceive the narrative of history. Okay, and I think us as human beings, our identity and memories are not as coherent and linear as history is being told to us. And in a way, you can say that I chose maybe to tell the story of the movie in a similar way to how Yosef remembered his own story or memory. I mean, they are fragmental, they do not necessarily reach the dramatic peak that one might expect, and I just see it as a human way and to remember or to construct our identity. And I used, as I said earlier, it was hard for me not to implement some ideas that I had as a grown-up. I used Yosef as a channel to talk not as a 17, and I can give you just an example, like in the first evening when Eina, the teacher, comes to Yosef and she asks him politely to maybe make his storytelling more efficient. So he says something like, I understand you want me to get to the action faster, and in a way you can say this is also like a message I give you guys. You might not get the action as fast or where you expect it to be. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. I think we have time for a couple more questions. I will just say this. If we want to continue the conversation, Asaf will be here, and we can just hang out in the cafe right by the theater. So keep your questions, because there will be more. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the decision to have him, a Polish man,
So the question was the decision to go with the Polish man, where Frisch goes with the Polish man and goes to the destroyed temple, just that whole narrative kind of arc.
Yeah, I could say that this is a more fantasy-like type of film, which I'm fine with that. It is based loosely on a few. By the way, during the time when I wrote the script, I told people, like friends, what am I working on? So many times the reaction was something like, "You would never believe what happened to me in Poland." So I, let's say, stole some stories. The Lemon Popsicle is based on one. In real life, not that no one could get lost, this is also based on a true story, but those kids do not meet Polish people, and in a way, or at least nowadays, at least Israeli roots. For me, that was an area of this detour. I wanted also to make a detour in the, let's say, in the genre, or to make the reality a bit, to make it more like a fantasy, or to make, to echo certain stereotypes, I could say. But I will share it with you. the ceremony in the synagogue is based on a personal experience I had. Very far from Poland, in Fiji, where I actually, it's based on a scene from Shoah by Claude Lanzmann, and by a very strange story that happened to me, and I walked and heard this gospel singing from a church. Actually, I guess it was Sunday morning, and I entered. I was the only white person there, and there was live music, and they were asking me, "Who am I? What am I doing here?" And I said, "I'm from Israel." And in 2 minutes, I found myself sitting on a stage with a long line of people waiting to get a blessing from this guy from the Holy Land. And that was very strange. I'm trying not to interpret it myself too much. I also try to leave some space for you guys. But there's other also elements that I wanted to plant in. Yeah.
How did you go about casting?
The question was, how did you go about casting?
Well, as I said before, I took quite a challenging task of putting on their shoulders, characters' shoulders, to try and distract you guys from the drama of the background. And I knew that the way to do it is by giving space, I would say, to a certain type of energy or dynamics. It's all scripted, but I wanted to cast a very young, I would say non-actors, but not yet professional actors. For all of them, it's their first appearance on screen.
Wow.
And let's say for them, it was very challenging or intimidating even to go on such a European production. And I put a lot of effort and time to make them feel at ease and to make them be themselves. And in order to create this spontaneous energy, which I think this is what being a teenager is all about. So let's say that we put a lot of planning in order to make it look unplanned.
I will just say that we're going to wrap up, unfortunately, for this portion of the conversation. Again, if you want to continue the conversation, we will be just outside the theater. I will make a note that Naomi Harari, who plays Neitz, she is in one of our Fresh Flicks films this year. She's in I Missed You at Synagogue. So if you want to see more of her amazing work, then you can watch Fresh Flicks. But
And she's also a casting her for my next TV series, which I'm now.
oh, great. Awesome. Well, we'll look forward to your next project. I'm sure we'll have you back as soon as possible.
Thank you
Yeah.
very much.
Yeah, thank you, Asaf. Thank you, everyone.